10 characters right off the bat is a lot to deal with. You know, it's not like, if you're doing Spider-Man, you got like Spider-Man, and you got Aunt May, and you got, you know, his girlfriend, and J. Jonah Jameson, and that's about it. That's what you're dealing with. But when you get books like the Avengers, you know, you got this huge cast, or like the Justice League, or whatever. It gets really hard to keep track of those characters. And so I knew that if the book continued, then we're going to add 10 more characters the next year. I ended up with 20 characters. So I figured, well, I got to be able to keep track of these. So I sat down and I wrote what I call at the time dossiers, which were like, you know, about 2 pages of information about each character so that I could keep them straight. And I wrote them as sort of like military files, like a personnel file. And I included like a psychological profile done by a fictitious shrink, peer report analyses. So I would, to cement the characters in my head, I would write about that character, a peer assessment of that character written in the voice of one of the other characters. So I killed 2 birds with 1 stone. I mean, I was defining the characters within their own parameters. And I did this strictly to be a guide for myself, for writing it. And then one day, one of the Hasbro guys saw my files, and he said, "Wow, we should put this on the back of the package." And that's how the file cards came to be. Probably the very first file folder or dossier or file card I wrote was Grunt, because he was at the top of the stack. It was infantry. So you know, he's a little bit more boring than the rest, because that's how it progresses. You know, okay, I'll do this guy, and I was sort of like, you know, you're a little hesitant at first. It's your first sticking your toe in the water for the first time. I didn't quite know what to do, but you know, by the time I got to like the commando, I was, wow, you know, I should just like push this stuff and have some fun, you know. So there was a progression there, I think. I was working at Marvel as the editor of Crazy magazine, which was sort of their version of Mad. It was a black and white humor magazine. And there were only 2 of us putting out this whole magazine, me and the assistant editor, Jim Owsley. So that took up most of our day. And, you know, I spent a lot of time at the physical Marvel offices, because we would have to do everything ourselves. Like, you know, Jim Owsley even set the type, you know, and you know, both of us would do paste ups and corrections and all that stuff. So I was probably at the office at Marvel when they were at 575 Madison. And probably was working on it at the office, because I don't even think I had a typewriter at the time. I think the first stuff was actually written on a typewriter. It was before I had a computer. Okay, bush viper. Bush vipers are essentially committed to long-range, start again. Bush vipers are usually committed to long-term operations deep in unfriendly territory, completely cut off from communications or resupply. They have an unusually high toleration for discomfort and can survive on a diet of snakes, grubs, roots, berries, nuts, and whatever slow rodents they can find.
They are expected to fashion their own shelter out of indigenous materials, usually rocks and mud. I'm sorry. And procure their own munitions, usually entailing a firefight. Bush Vipers are the favorites of Cobra High Command since they are so cheap to operate. It doesn't cost anything to feed, clothe, or arm them once they are in the field, and the High Command makes sure they stay in the field as much as possible. I've obviously had a lot of fun writing this one. Was Tunnel Rat based on me? Yes and no. Basically, one year they decided to up the ante and get a really good sculptor to do the heads. So they got the guy who did the holograms for credit cards, the guy who did the dove for the Visa card. You might not know that holograms have to be the same size. They're actually sculpted that tiny. So they got this guy who could really do like tiny likenesses in good detail. And they sent the guy over to my office at Marvel, and to take Polaroids and sketches and whatever. And so the head of the Tunnel Rat figure is based on me, on my head, circa 1985 or something. Nothing in the file card is me at all. It's a combination of 2 or 3 people I knew. One of whom was a guy I played in a band with for a while, named Charlie Chin, who was Trinidadian Chinese. So I figured, oh, that's different. And it's sort of an interesting culture. The rest I just sort of made up. So yes, the head of Tunnel Rat was supposedly me, but nothing else in the file card is me. I'm not Chinese, I guess. Well, probably Snake Eyes, because he's the easiest to do. Never speaks. I could just have him just do stuff. I can't ever write the wrong dialogue for him. But I've always liked the chemistry between Snake Eyes and Scarlet, and how that works out, and Storm Shadow and Stalker and some of these other characters. I never particularly liked Duke. I thought, especially at the beginning, but he sort of grew on me after a while. There were a lot of characters that I thought, what the heck am I doing with this guy? They seem silly, like Raptor, this guy with the buzzard wings. Or Crystal Ball, this hypno wheel, whatever. Or once I started writing these characters and putting, making them stand up and walk around and finding a rationale for why they were like that, I started to like them. Okay, this is about Zap. Excerpt from Psychological Profile by Colonel A. Goodwin, USANG. Gregarious, fun-loving type. Tendencies towards self-criticism, but not overly paranoid. Extremely pragmatic outlook on life, characteristic of explosive ordnance personnel. Peer personality assessment by Spec 4 Freidstadt, Eric. Zap is cool. He's got to be. That stuff he works on could blow up in his face anytime. He's square. I mean, that in the old-fashioned good sense. Like, he can look you in the eye and not flinch, because he's not pulling any fast ones on you.